Russia. It's the largest country on the face of the planet, with a population of 140 million people, and a history of great turmoil and even greater triumph. It is a mystery to most of us here in North America. When I begin to speak of Russia, what are the first things that come to your mind? Maybe vodka, bears, AK-47s, Ushankas, the former Soviet Union. How about choir music? Because that's one of the first things that comes to my mind when I think about Russia. Russia actually has a very strong and proud tradition of choir music that has been with its people for many centuries and has been an integral part of forming the Russian identity. And today, I'm going to take you through the history of that tradition. This is my history of Russian choir. As with most countries, the tradition of Russian choir began with the establishment of its church, the Russian Orthodox Church. And Orthodox Christianity is one of the oldest forms of Christianity that we know of. Orthodox Christianity can trace its roots back to the development of the Roman Empire and when the Roman Empire first began to spread Christianity throughout its borders. Over time, the Christian church began to split and schism. As you can understand, this is in the first early days of Christianity. The first 4 centuries or so, people still hadn't established a firm doctrine. People began to disagree over the nature and the relationship between the divine being and the human figure Jesus Christ. And eventually, the church continued to split until a section that became known as Orthodox Christianity was formed. Eventually, the Western Roman Empire would fall, and the Eastern Roman Empire would be renamed the Byzantine Empire. And in the 9th and 10th centuries, the Byzantine Empire would begin to start conquering Slavic nations and Slavic countries and begin spreading its form of Orthodox Christianity to the people there. The first people the Byzantines began to convert were the people of Bulgaria, and at the time the Bulgarians were ruled by Tsar Boris I, who definitely welcomed the Byzantine influence in his nation. And relationships continued to build until in 893 AD, the Bulgarian Tsar expelled all the former Greek clergymen from his nation and declared the official religion of Bulgaria to be that of the Byzantine Orthodox Christian Church. And it was because of this success in Bulgaria that allowed the Byzantines to facilitate the conversion of other Slavic nations and send in missionaries and build up those relations with those other countries, until eventually all the various denominations of the Orthodox Church would be established, including the Russian Orthodox Church, which is the largest known section of Orthodox Christianity today. Things went on as such until the 11th century when the Great Schism took place, and the differences between Rome and Constantinople could no longer be facilitated, and Western Christianity and Eastern Christianity were finally divided into their 2 separate churches. Western Christianity was established, and today we know that section of Christianity as sort of Catholicism, and then the Protestant Church was formed after that, and all other denominations following, and Eastern Christianity, what we know today as the Orthodox Church, and all denominations underneath them. Now there is one quick tradition that I would like to state about Orthodox Christianity that I believe is very important to the development of Russian choir. And that is that proceedings in an Orthodox church are sung nearly in their entirety. Meaning that when you get a prevalence of this form of Christianity throughout the nation, coupled with the fact that almost all proceedings are entirely sung, you have a foundation for a very strong tradition of choir music. Now let me take a brief opportunity to explain how the Russian language works before we continue. And it works much differently from our native language of English, and I want to do this because I had been listening to Russian music for a very long time before I started to learn Russian, because I found the way the language sounded and the way the music was formed and the words were formed were very pleasing to listen to. And I've asked a lot of my friends and people I know to listen to some Russian music as well, and they tend to agree with me. And I have a theory about why Russian music sounds so naturally pleasing. Russian derives its meaning from word endings. Unlike English, where we often derive the meaning from our sentences from the order of the words. And these word endings in Russian are called cases, and there are 6 of them, and I'm going to briefly sort of outline them for you. The first case is called the nominative case, otherwise called sort of the dictionary case, and this is the way the word appears without any kind of modifications, without adding anything to the word. So let's just take a phrase, "Mой друг," which means my friend in Russian. Now right now, "my друг" is in the nominative case, and I'm going to briefly run over the next 5 cases for you. Not going to exactly tell you what their function is in a linguistic sense, because I'm not here to give you a crash course in Russian, but I do want you to pay attention to the way "my друг" might change in sound depending on the case. The first case here is the locative case, and it can be exemplified in this sentence, "Шляпа на моем друге," which means the hat is on my friend. The next case is the genitive case, exemplified here, "Моего друга дом," which means my friend's house. The next case is the accusative case, which in this circumstance will sound very similar to the genitive case. "Я вижу моего друга," which means I see my friend. Next is the dative case, exemplified here, "Я дал подарок моему другу." And finally, the instrumental case, exemplified with this sentence, "Я был с моим другом," which means I was with my friend. Now the reason why I'm telling you all this is to simply inform you that the nominative form of the word is not always the form of the word you will be hearing in conversation, or in song, or in writing, or in poetry, or what have you. Even words that have been incorporated into Russian from other languages will still be affected with these various cases. Let's take, I don't know, professor as an example. You won't always hear the word professor in everyday Russian conversation. It'll be modified to, the locative case, so professorie, or the genitive case, professora, or the instrumental case, professorom, and so on and so forth. Now, words in the same ending are generally speaking going to rhyme. There is a difference between feminine and masculine endings, but I'm not going to confuse you more than I already have. So let's just take 6 random words and put them into the locative case. Domje, компьютере, библиотеке, храме, карандаше, and автомобиле. As you can tell, I just picked 6 words, 6 random words, put them into the locative case, and thus they all sort of flow together. Meaning that in Russian you can make words that otherwise wouldn't rhyme very easily with these case endings. As well, Russian in its sentences derives meaning from these case endings, which is very different in English, where we derive meaning from word order. And because Russian gets its meaning from these endings, that means word order is unimportant, and you can virtually put words into whatever order you want. Let's take the example sentence I used for the dative case earlier. Я дал подарок моему другу, which means I gave a present to my friend. But I could just as easily said подарок я моему другу дал, which means present I to my friend gave. Which in English sounds like a total mess, but in Russian that sentence still makes perfect sense. Meaning that a Russian writer or composer can create sentences, because word order doesn't matter so much, they can create sentences that flow very well with other sentences, also given the fact that Russian kind of rhymes naturally anyway, and they can create these beautiful sentences or songs that flow very, very, very well, which you can see in Russian poetry and in Russian music. To exemplify what I just said, I'm going to play a little snippet of a song called Lupit Neba by Lochtog, and Lupit Neba means sort of love the sky, or love the heavens, and while this isn't a choir song, it's more of a hip-hop, maybe trance kind of deal. I want you to pay particular attention to how the language moves from one word and one verse to the next.
Воздух, мы возле дома лечим чем-то розовым наш нос, но наши сердца работают, мы роботы нарочно. Я выбиваю стекла из окна, и это просто. Я после 2 иду и буду думать об одном, и мне не важно, где Габбана, и где Прада, и где что, и где-то может между нашими мирами города. Но даже старые до смерти не дают повода думать, да. И даже если бы сейчас я думал о судьбе белыми листьями, она бы заявила о себе эти загоны. Ты часто, ты можешь разбежаться, как прыгуны, прыгнуть с крыши. Но боже, боже мой, это похоже на другой какой-то мир. Может он мой, а тот, что был, это не мой. Может тот, что был до этого, иллюзия. Но стоп, проходит вечер, story end, завянет как цветок. Снег, город, машины, руки, капоты, вагоны, любовь.